I don't know. Tim Walz is out there talking again.
You say he could fight any Trump supporter?
Yeah, he says he kicked their and they're scared of him because he could fix a truck. Like they're threatened by his masculinity. I know how to fix a truck. That's what he said. I'm like, do you? I bet you don't.
The lady doth protest too much.
I bet you don't.
I fear.
I bet if I bring a broken truck to you and a bag of tools, you're
You were saying that men he worked with in the National Guard in Nebraska went to the FBI because they believed he had given classified military secrets to the Chinese government?
They suspect that he did.
Suspected to the point that they went to the FBI.
And then China started producing almost a carbon copy of this military tank a couple of years later.
Come on. For real?
According to all of our research.
Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson recently teamed up to deliver a strong critique of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and they didn't pull any punches. During their discussion, Rogan expressed open disbelief at some of Walz's decisions, using sharp humor to highlight what he saw as repeated failures in leadership. Carlson, on the other hand, took a more analytical approach, breaking down Walz's policies and pointing to missteps in areas like the state's response to the pandemic and the rise in crime. Both commentators argued that these issues reflect a broader pattern of weak leadership, with Carlson suggesting that Walz's approach has left Minnesota worse off. Their conversation made it clear that, in their view, Walz hasn't lived up to the responsibilities of his office, and they didn't hesitate to name him as a prime example of what happens when leadership falls short.
exact same thing, and he said, of course, it's a Nazi salute. He said that.
Right.
We spent 3 days debating, having them trying to debate that President Musk gave a Nazi salute. Of course he did. But that is a distraction.
This is how crazy things have gotten. Like,
it's coordinated propaganda.
So who is Tim Walz exactly? Most of us, I just want to say, I think he's should be investigated by the sex crimes unit. I really feel that way. I'm not asking you to comment on that, but he's one of the creepiest people I've ever seen. The vibe I get off that guy, I would not let him in my house. That's just my feeling. Maybe I'm being totally unfair. And when
Joe Rogan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, wearing that familiar look of doubt, as if he just heard something that didn't quite add up. The conversation soon turned to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and Rogan wasted no time getting straight to the point. He launched into a sharp and passionate critique, making it clear this wasn't going to be a simple or polite discussion. With blunt honesty, Rogan questioned many of Walz's decisions, especially how the governor handled the pandemic and the increasing crime rates in the state. He didn't hold back, pointing out what he saw as a pattern of poor judgment and weak leadership. For Rogan, Walz wasn't just making a few mistakes. He was emblematic of a larger problem in government, where the people in charge seemed disconnected from the real challenges facing their communities. His tone combined frustration with disbelief, as if he couldn't understand how these issues could be allowed to continue under Walz's watch. It was clear Rogan saw the governor's leadership as not just ineffective, but harmful, and he made sure his message hit hard and loud.
You know how gangster that is?
Yeah.
You shoot a guy in the face and the dude's like, yeah, I look like a bird. Don't worry about it.
I look like a deer. Is there any way to you that we're not being gaslit by Kamala Harris?
In what way?
Wasn't she a joke even among Democrats?
They've talked about this in
Tiananmen Square.
interviews. Yeah, this is in newspapers.
Tiananmen Square was a massacre of peaceful protesters.
I know.
Do you think they picked it to in the memory of those brave souls who died opposing the machine?
They haven't said that.
My God!
His wedding anniversary, they were married 5 years after Tiananmen Square, and he picked that date because it was a date that they would remember, he and his wife.
What?
Who does that?
Tiananmen Square?
Correct.
The tank crushing the lone protester? That's
their wedding anniversary.
And they went much. If the people in Minnesota like it, who cares? It's just a star and some colors. The real problem is when you hear discussions of things that are openly Marxist philosophies, when you hear talk about equal outcomes and and not just equal opportunity, but that we all need to arrive at the same place, equal outcome talk. There's only one way they can do that, and it's by forcing you.
Well, it's by everyone having nothing.
Yeah.
That's the only way to have things totally equal, because you can't have everyone have everything. That's impossible.
Right. There's no way. There's not enough resources.
And then came the riot.
Rogan zeroed in on Governor Walz's handling of the pandemic, and he didn't hold back. Chuckling to himself, as if recalling a bad sci-fi movie, Rogan described Walz's approach as treating Minnesota like a giant petri dish for some confusing experiment.
He pointed out how Walz imposed some of the most restrictive and puzzling rules anyone had seen. While small businesses and gyms were forced to shut down, schools remained closed, but oddly enough, large stores like big box retailers were allowed to stay open. Rogan found this logic baffling and couldn't resist mocking it. He joked that Walz must have thought alcohol was more effective at killing the virus than exercise or sunlight, since liquor stores were open, but gyms were not. This inconsistency, Rogan argued, only added to confusion and frustration felt by many Minnesotans during that time. For him, these decisions weren't just mistakes. They were examples of leadership that lacked common sense and failed to protect the community properly.
I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it.
First of all, kudos to CBS for allowing Governor Walz to quote Matthew 25:40 without interrupting him and saying, I'm sorry, that's an attempt at bringing in foreign disinformation campaigns. We can't accept that.
May those words burn on your tongue.
Right.
That's what I thought.
And then Rogan moved on to the mask mandates, and his reaction was pure disbelief. He rolled his eyes so hard it was like he was trying to shake off a bad memory from a school cafeteria lunch nobody wanted to remember. Rogan painted a vivid picture of Governor Walz, as if he was blindly following a pandemic rulebook written by a group of Twitter activists and government bureaucrats who hadn't seen daylight since the year 2000. To Rogan, this wasn't leadership guided by science or common sense. It was more like a panic-driven performance. He called it panic theater, where Walz was a lead actor, delivering dramatic lines and making sweeping decisions, while every Minnesotan was forced into a role in the show, whether they agreed with it or not. For Rogan, this approach created confusion and frustration, making people feel like they were part of scripted play rather than living in a state where leaders made clear, rational choices to protect their citizens.
If someone is going to inherit your soul, they don't want it bogged down with bad habits.
Right. Yeah, well, they don't want it to be evil. They want it to have negative energy attached to it and the karma of killing a bunch of people.
Right.
Like, who wants Dick Cheney's soul? You know? The alien's like, you could have that, dude.
Remember when he shot someone and then the guy apologized to him? Isn't that nuts?
You know how gangster that is?
Yeah.
You shoot a guy in the face and the dude's like, yeah, I look like a bird. Don't worry about it.
I look like a deer. Is there any way to you that we're not being gaslit like to hell by Kamala Harris?
In what way?
Then came the riots, and Rogan was honestly left scratching his head in disbelief. The way Governor Walz handled the George Floyd protests, and more importantly, the violent chaos that erupted afterward, was so baffling it briefly left Rogan speechless. But once he found his words, he launched into a fiery critique, as if watching someone pour gasoline on a raging fire. Rogan described Minneapolis during that time as looking like a scene straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie, with entire neighborhoods destroyed and city blocks reduced to rubble. What shocked him most was Walz's response, or lack of one. Instead of stepping up with strong leadership, Rogan said the governor seemed to just stand there, looking surprised and saying almost nothing, while destruction spread unchecked. For Rogan, this wasn't just a missed opportunity to restore order. It was a clear sign of weak leadership that allowed chaos to take over and left residents feeling abandoned and unsafe. The image of a leader watching everything fall apart without a real plan was one that stuck with him and became a powerful example of what he saw as Walz's failure in a time when Minnesotans needed him most.
I think it's fake. All of it.
Well, that Walz guy, I mean, I don't want to be too unfair because I don't know him and I don't have any hard evidence. He's a weirdo. That guy's weird.
He seems very
I'm
strange.
sorry.
Yes.
There's something not right about that guy's personal life. So I hope I'm wrong because I don't want people like that with power. But most people I know with power in Washington have personal lives that would not withstand scrutiny.
But also, interestingly enough, he has a confession letter. This is what I would call it. It's a letter made out to the FBI to Kash Patel that says that Governor Tim Walz made him do this.
Rogan joked that it felt like Walz was trying to set a world record for the slowest response to civil unrest, as if he was waiting for the fire to send him an official meeting invite. He said Walz didn't really govern so much as hold press conferences, hoping the smoke would just clear on its own. According to Rogan, that wasn't leadership. It was more like watching a substitute teacher try to control a rowdy classroom armed with nothing but a pamphlet and a prayer. Then Rogan shifted to education, where he really turned up the heat. He roasted Walz's relationship with the teachers' unions, saying it was less of a partnership and more like a hostage situation. Schools stayed closed so long, under Walz, that kids might have forgotten what a pencil looked like. Meanwhile, teachers' union leaders were treated like oracle priests, with their demands carved in stone, and no one daring question them. Rogan laughed at how Minnesota's public education seemed to have turned into a political vending machine. Every new policy came with a catchy slogan, but zero real results. Next, Rogan went after crime, violent crime, carjackings, and police morale. He said under Walz, Minneapolis had become a place where Uber drivers needed to get paid extra just for the risk, and cops were treated more like suspects than protectors. He pictured Walz sitting comfortably in his office, sipping coffee from a mug that said, "Please don't blame me," while neighborhoods spiraled out of control and residents were locking their doors by midday. For Rogan, all these problems were tied to the same issue: weak leadership that left people feeling unsafe and ignored.
When he was running for Congress. There's more than one thing, too, right? He said he was a head coach.
Yeah, he was a head coach.
He was not a head coach. He was an assistant coach, which is an honorable thing. There's nothing wrong with being an assistant coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he also inflated his actual rank, right? He was slated to achieve a certain rank.
Right.
And how did it go? Like, he had to commit to the fact that he wasn't going to retire in order to achieve his rank.
But I think that. But I can't get past the core fact about Walz, which is he presided over, allowed the biggest city in the state to get burned down,
and seemed to not only allow it, but kind of support it. You know.
Did you see the video of his wife saying, "I kept the windows open so I could smell the burning rubber from the riots"?
I did not see that.
The wife whose hand he shook.